Y grabando, FENCast grabando otro episodio, bueno, el primer episodio dedicado a NaPoWriMo 2020. And due to the current circumstances regarding COVID-19 and the long distance, we have a dear friend, fellow poet, all the way from New York right now on the phone, Bones, aka Bonafide Rojas.
Yo, what's up? Am I too loud? Am I good to go?
You're
Very
good
nice.
to go. You're good to go. So, let's start from the beginning, man. So, how did you get into poetry?
You want the origin story?
Everything.
All right. So the origin story is I hated school. I hated school as a kid. Once I got into high school, all I wanted to do was really hang out and chill. I was a graffiti writer for a few years before I started writing poetry. So the concept of being a writer wasn't foreign to me. So on my senior year of high school in New York, you need to have something like 40 credits to graduate. So that's like, basically like 10 credits a year or something like that. So by the time I got to my senior year, I had 10 credits, and I wasn't going to stay in school longer just to get a little piece of paper. I realized I wasn't behind in terms of being smart. I was uninspired, and I just didn't really see the value of it. So I dropped out of high school, and about a month in, my sister, who was a really early catalyst for me in my life, she told me that she wasn't going to have me stay home, basically, and not do anything. I think back then I was still smoking weed like every other day. So she was like, I'm going to be in the house high and sleeping. So I was like, okay. So she had me intern at this Puerto Rican education agency called Aspira of New York, which Aspira has been around for a really, really long time. So I was just doing like office work. She worked there. She was one of the leadership development people. And they had me just interning, doing regular little things. I think she also took it upon herself to like not have them let me be a copy boy and just stay in the copy room all day, but actually try to learn something, like, be it better understanding of Microsoft or things like that. So because of that, that gave me something to do every day, like every other day. And there was a conference. It was called Muévete. I believe the one that I went to was the second one, which was, I don't want to date myself on this, but, it was a long time ago. It was in the 90s. I tell people that was in the 90s. And it was myself, my boy, William Ross, and my boy, Joel Sosa. Like the three of us were like the young, and my homegirl, Shirley Rodriguez. So the four of us were like the young people in that section, and this stemmed multiple generations where the older folks that were involved with it, even though they weren't organizing it, was like heavy duty folks like Iris Morales, Richie Perez, and a lot of like old school Puerto Rican organizers that stemmed from the Young Lords, and like all these other like really heavy duty folks. I was just happy to see young people there, because even now when I go to things, I always see how many young people are there, because the youngest person in the room shouldn't be a 35, 40-year-old organizer. There should always be someone a little bit younger to kind of take the reins over and see the merit of the work. So after that conference, when that conference happened, especially when I think about it in hindsight, that was the first place it was the place that I found my GED program. That was like the biggest thing about it. Like I found my GED program, and it was the GED program was really good. They were really healthy and beneficial in terms of my development. And actually before or even the same time period, I'm pretty sure I know she did. I'm trying to figure out the date, but my sister took me to the New Rican to one of the open mics. It was one of Babito's open mics. I remember we sat upstairs. I remember this hip hop crew had like 7 people in there, and they stood there for like 20 minutes. And that was like the first time I went to the New York. So that was really early 90s, right? Like early 90s. We're talking about the mid 90s right now. So at the conference, Luis Reyes Rivera read poetry, but I'm pretty sure I didn't stay to see him read because I was like, poetry, whatever. So after that particular conference, I made all these like new kind of friends, right? These new batch of friends that you get whenever you enter like a different social scene, right? You have your friends from high school, you have your friends from your neighborhood, then you have your friends from colegio, then you have all these like networks that you start building up. And in New York, because of the way we're designed, I have friends in every borough. Now, how I kept up with them was a different conversation, but I really have friends in every borough, which is hopefully a prototypical New York thing, to have friends in Queens, have friends in Brooklyn, and so on and so forth. So April of the next year, which, if I'm not mistaken, is April 1994, which predates, whoever's listening is probably like, wow, yeah, exactly. I've been writing longer, you've been alive. We were training for a conference in Albany, which is the state capital, and every section had to do a skit. They had me in the Lower Manhattan section because I wasn't in high school. I was in a GED program. So my GED program was in Lower Manhattan, which is the same one that I got from the conference. And when we're doing the skit, they asked me if I wanted to be the guy who took the lead. Maybe because I was friendly. I don't know. When I was younger, I was a lot more hyper. I know I can come off as a slightly more loner type, but when I was younger, I was really hyper. I really liked being center of attention, and real typical, trying to be charismatic thing. And I still have a photo of that actual performance in my house somewhere, physical photo. That year, that January is when I started growing my hair out. So this photo has me with very short hair. I remember the shirt I was wearing. There's little things that my attention to detail stems from I don't know how many attention things I got old when I got younger and older. And the skit was horrible. I didn't write a poem for the skit. I'm doing cartwheels or doing something stupid, which is some typical class clown shit, which is something I have been forever. But then my boy William, he wrote a monologue. He came out of Brooklyn Tech, which was a really good school, and he was in the Brooklyn section, one of the Brooklyn teams. And he wrote this monologue, and it was amazing. Right? You're talking about he was 15 years old. And he had the stage presence and just this really grown man voice and projection. And you're like, whoa. So when we were done with that, I fancied myself slightly put together. I had a really deep musical love already before any of that. I already was really waist deep in all the modern music I was listening to. I went to art school. I wanted to be a painter first. But I wanted to be a poet. And so when we were coming down from Albany, I wrote a poem, right? I wrote a poem. And this part is the part I tell most people because of our relationship with things that we hold dear to us, as if we're the only ones, as if we're the ones that discovered it, right? So if you're the first person on your block that watch or skates or even does graffiti, when the next person comes up and they're more well versed or better, or just people identify them as oh yeah no, Fen watches anime, and you're like, dude, Fen didn't watch anime before me. What are you talking about? Right? Sometimes you get defensive, and trust me, I've gotten defensive with people when they have no clue who or what the Beatles do, and then I go, here, listen to these records, and then they turn around and try to tell me something about the Beatles, and look at them, I'm like, what are you talking about? I've read every single article possible. There's nothing you can tell me about that. So I understand where that comes from. So when I wrote the poem, it was a horrible poem, by the way. It was a poem called Life. And I mentioned it in one of my poems that it was the first poem. That was the first poem I wrote. It was called Life. had a really bad rhythm pattern. I have the original somewhere, I think. And I showed it to Will. And I tell people that this moment really defines everything, because if he would have clowned me and called me a biter, a poser, right? Like, I don't know if I would have taken that well at 17 years old. You know what I mean? I might have been like, what? Right? Like, I might have, like, really had a bad reaction to that. But he wasn't. He was really empathetic and compassionate and caring about it. And him and I, you know, we really, in the really beginning, like, we bounced off each other a bit. Like, we competed in some other things as teenagers, and we both won. So one of the first places I ever read poetry, even though I never ever talk about it, was this huge one-day, like, festival at the Apollo. And him and I both read the poems that we wrote. And, you know, we won some money, and it was cool. But, you know, like, that really started everything. That was, let me see, I wrote the poem around April, so I think the Apollo thing was, like, in June. And, you know, from April until, like, maybe late October or November, I read, like, 60 books of poetry. I mean, I stole almost all of them on purpose for that same reason. Because I am a book thief, only from, like, stores, well, not from, like, people. And, yeah, and then I had like all these little, like, you know, journals, little black books that were, like, the front was all poetry and the back was all, like, graffiti stuff. And I remember the first poem that had a really different feel than everything before was the poem that eventually ended up being called Daily Rituals, which was in Pelo Bueno. And it was this 24-hour, like, time scheme poem. And it talked about, you know, like, the trials and tribulations of growing up in New York and being, you know, this Puerto Rican kid. And, you know, I already had a fro by then, like, you know, and I listened to rock music. So, like, all these things, you know, these are real typical tropes that you go through because you're just trying to express yourself and figure everything out. But, yeah, Daily Rituals. I had a piece right after that called I Am, which I never published on purpose. I tell people when they know that poem, they've known me way too long. A friend of mine just mentioned it the other day, like, hey, when did you write that piece? I was like, yeah, it was either 94 or, like, really early 95. And then, you know, when I got out of my GED program, I got my GED that April. It was either 95 or 94. Like, I don't even know how early that was. I have to ask my friend, because when he graduated, I already had my GED. So I was, like, right on time in terms of getting out of school. But by the end of that year, I was already, like I was painting a bit, because in the GED program, they allowed us to paint. I had, like, a little one-man show, and a lot of stuff was already political. But that's the thing, too, that I tell people is that as much as I was doing all this poetry work, I was really heavy into politics and, like, black nationalism and Puerto Rican nationalism and activism. And that was there for a few years until I realized a lot of the organizers in New York were just doing rhetoric. They weren't doing action. So I got to a point where I said, well, I'm going to be political in my work, regardless of what it is and what the subject matter is. Because I think at the end of the day, being able to express yourself in whatever manner is a very political act. And, you know, like, so yeah, I started performing that same year. So by the time I was performing, I was already about 18. And this is like, you know, some of these places were 21 and over. I remember the first two real places. There was this one spot in Brooklyn, which I don't remember. I met some folks, and they were like, hey, we have a reading at this B. Dalton. It wasn't even a Barnes & Noble's yet. It was a B. Dalton on 8th Street and 6th Avenue. The building's still there, but the store's not there no more. So I went through, and this is another one of those, like, early jokes that people don't know about. So I went to the reading, and there was a lot of people there who I'm still friends with now. And I signed myself up. I had this really loud, you know, typical Bonafide poem about people who wanted to call themselves revolutionaries and just wear, like, you know, polo and, like, and Gucci and shit. It was this thing about, it's called Revolutionary Ad for America's Fashion. And of course I had to put 3 Ks in America because I was mad edgy. And when they called me up, they called me Bonafide. And I looked at them like they were crazy. I was like, bro, what? And so, you know, fast forward, when I go to Puerto Rico and everyone keeps calling me Bonafide, like, it doesn't bother me because he won't be the first one. The first one was the guy who hosted that open mic. And I was like, bro, like, Fuck, you never heard the word bona fide. What's wrong with you? And even the word. So now, to break the myth, bona fide is not my real name. Do not ask me what my real name is. 'Cause I'm probably never going to tell you. But I was reading a dictionary. Because I had dropped out of high school and I had this weird complex about education, I wanted to put myself in a position where no one could theoretically tell me what to do, because I wanted to independently learn everything on my own, which is what college is half the time anyway, right? And so I was reading the dictionary because I read that Malcolm X read the dictionary. And I was like, well, if it's good for Malcolm, it's good for me. So when I got to the word bona fide, I was like, wow, this is a really good word. I've heard it used before, but I don't think I've ever heard a person. So I was like, bona fide. I was in the mirror. I was, this little snotty ass kid. Like, yeah, you know what? I'll be either delusional or confident enough to call myself bona fide. And because it was the mid '90s, and because it was New York is a really, really strong hip hop city. Yeah, no one questioned me. I knew kids named Knowledge. I knew kids named Wisdom. I knew I had a lot of 5% of friends, a lot of Muslim friends, and a lot of MCs. And so it was okay. And then eventually, when I finished Pelo Bueno, Luis Reyes Rivera was the one who recommended I use Bonafide Rojas, because there's going to be another guy named Bonafide. It's not going to be you. And I was like, just you. And he was right. There was another person. There's a Christian rapper who had more fans than I did. And that's like the origin story, because after that it was just a bunch of open mics at the New Eurekan, which was like one of the only places they had poetry. I hung out with my graffiti crew. My boy worked for Babito, so we were always in the city. We were always downtown. And those from '95 to 2000, that was a lot of special shit going on. In terms of what was bubbling up in New York. Almost anybody that wasn't completely famous, if they had some kind of any underground feel, I saw them perform. I met them a bunch of times. My boy managed Doom before Doom really blew up. Whether it was real or not, Doom was still calling him like, yo, do you have any stuff for me? He goes, yeah, I got you a gig at the New York. All right, cool. And I seen Doom without the mask, and he puts a mask on. It was just the stocking was just a stocking cap, and he'll go on stage and do it, and this is because it was New York, right? New York was still very small in terms of scenes, right? If it wasn't New Eurekan, it was Tramps. If it wasn't Tramps, it was Wetlands. There was so many like really small spots in the city that because all of a sudden I ended up being 6 feet out of nowhere, and I like to dance to house music, and I ended up in all these clubs, because I started working at a club at 15. So I already knew a lot of people from clubs just from that, because I was already doing promotions for that. And this is before I had hair, but they just recognized me. And then two of my boys did a bunch of hip-hop shows, which I worked for the company. So I went to I saw so many hip-hop acts. For the rock and roll in me, I saw way more hip-hop acts in the 90s than I did for rock and roll, because, it cost money and my ass is broke. But yeah, so that was like, New York was quintessential. I do tell people that if I was born in LA or San Francisco or Chicago or Boston, a lot of this might not change, because some of these things were really influenced by my sister, her being political. I don't necessarily know if I would have gotten into poetry, but I think a lot of those things still would have been the same.
Gotcha. De hecho, so let's break all of that down. So first off,
and that's
yeah. So
break all of that down. That picture that I just posted up on Facebook with the young face, that's what I'm talking about. This is everything before like 22.
Oh, gotcha. So starting to break this down, a lot of your poetry can be very rhythmic. So let's start first with your poetry influences, and then if you can talk to me about your musical influences and how they blend into your style.
Yeah, so I never wanted to be a rapper. That's one thing. I never wanted to be a rapper, even though I don't think it would have been far-fetched if I did. Maybe it's the fact that I don't like the sound of my own voice, even though I have a band now and stuff like that. But back then, I just didn't feel like, oh yeah, let's be a rapper. No, poetry wise, like it does start with a lot of the early New York cats, whether they were the first influence or not. I'm going to cite them as the first ones. Like Pedro Pietri was one of my favorite dudes. Willie Perdomo was one of my favorite dudes. He's still one of my favorite dudes. Sana Maria Esteves, Amiri Baraka, Allen Ginsberg, and a lot of them were also really like old school New York cats. So like a lot of New York cats, I tend to like navigate to because I want to see what stories they have. And when I started like really checking out like the certain trees that some of these people have and like where they got their influences, like Neruda is one of my biggest influences, and I wonder if it's because at this point is nostalgia, a certain romanticism I have for him. But when I read the work, it's his phrasings and his metaphors are just they're so clean, right? They don't make you shake your head and go, I don't understand what you're saying. They might make you look up a word or two, right? But that's good for you to look up a word, to figure out, to expand the vocabulary, right? Ginsberg, I didn't really take to too many American poets at first, but like Ginsberg and Cummings, and that might be it. Like I was really like, nah, I'm okay. I don't want to get into like dead white boys because that's what they teach you in school anyway, right? But like the black arts movement, Sonia Sanchez, Nikki Giovanni, like there was so many people to choose from, and then but then music had a lot to do with what I did, even if it was just a poetry section. So like man, you look at like my favorite records at the time period, right? And all the guys that were writing those music, Charcoal Quest had a huge influence on what I did. Organized Confusion and Pharaoh Monch had a huge influence. So they have a song, which is the very last song off of Stress, The Extinction Agenda, which is, I think, Organized's second or third record. It's the best one I think they ever put out. But that song Maintain is the blueprint to Daily Rituals. Because he went through like this whole story, and he told a story. And I thought it was really interesting for that he was telling a story that was really, really, like he woke up and he got out of his bed, upward negative thoughts running straight to my head, lights red, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. So yeah, the rhythm patterns from hip hop are there. But I tell people I just didn't think that, and I still don't sometimes think that hip hop has the emotional spectrum that a lot of rock music has. Right, so then in terms of rock music, it's across the board. It starts with the Beatles and it can end with like Radiohead. Like there was so much I was listening to from like 12 years old up to if you want to do a 10-year phrasing, from 12 to 22. I listened to a lot of shit. Like people were looking at me like a bone. Like I get it. Like I was about 18 and I'm listening to like prog rock, and that just wasn't something that was. Like, you can listen to punk, you can listen to metal, but I'm over here listening to Yes, King Crimson, and, all this like Jethro Tull, really strange British music. Now, eventually people catch on, but back then I was like, there was a magazine called Guitar World, and Guitar World, which I used to, I used to steal from like every bookstore I had a chance to. And my collection is kind of crazy with how many of those magazines I had. They had this one magazine one year. It was 1969. That was the name of the magazine title. And they highlighted every record that came out in 1969. And that's it. That's all you needed. Because it had everybody. It had the Beatles, the Stones, it had Hendrix, it had King Crimson, it had so many. It had, I think, the first Zeppelin record. It might have had the first Black Sabbath record, but it was so many records that you like. Instead of just going down the rabbit hole of YouTube or going on a website now, that's how I found out a lot of records. It's like, oh, who do they like? Oh, who are they highlighting in their top 10? Right? So certain bands that you would never hear from, you heard if say, Alex Lifeson from Rush is saying, "Oh, I'm checking out the new Mars Volta record." If you're listening to the Mars Volta record, you feel validated that Alex Lifeson is listening to the Mars Volta record. So
did you also read the liner notes and stuff like that?
I read everything. I still have my liner notes. I threw out the cases, but I kept the liner notes for a lot of my favorite records. I mean, that's the thing, man. That like the habitual nature we have with music now is so different. Now, granted, I mean, you're gonna hear a common theme with poetry and everything else, but I stole a lot of music as a kid. Like I stole everything. Like I don't have a shame in that. I just tell people, if you're gonna do it, just don't get caught. Don't be a bum and get caught. And we're gonna make fun of you. But yeah, music, man. So yeah, it was the Beatles. It was Rage Against the Machine. It was definitely Nirvana. It was Guns N' Roses. It was Depeche Mode. It was Faith No More. It was Black Sabbath. It was for a little bit the Doors. Bob Marley. Massive amounts of Pink Floyd. These and Zeppelin. These are all the things I had in my room. But my room was a rock and roll room. It wasn't a hip hop room because I don't know. I don't know why I didn't have picture of Pac and Biggie in my room. I mean, I liked Biggie. I love Biggie a lot, but Pac, whatever. But that's just me. It's a New York thing. But no, my room was. Let me see if I can remember. I had 200 posters that I bought, years apart, but I had them there. I had a cover Dark Side of the Moon. I had Guitar World always had these little fold-out 11 by 17 posters that I loved. So I had a Beatles one. I had a Bob Marley one. I had a Pink Floyd one. I had Jimmy Page, Jim Morrison, Stevie Ray Vaughan. And there was, so when I would date somebody or if someone would come to see me and the first thing they say is like, "Who's the black dude on your wall?" I'm like, "Do you mean Jimi Hendrix?" Like I already knew that this is going to be a lonely life sometime because people don't know what the hell you're talking about. But I think the rhythm patterns in hip hop lent itself to that also because I was performing around so many other hip hop based poets or rappers at open mics. But my content eventually changed into being more open the way a rock song would. But I can still write a beat. I can still write things in iambic pentameter and break things apart. I wouldn't be, in poetry-wise, I wouldn't be a slave to the ABA rhyme style. That eventually happened when I started writing songs. So I started writing songs, I would definitely still fall under that rhythm pattern. But in a poem, no. I still maintain a certain rhythm pattern. The way Days Like This in Pelo Bueno, the way Notes to Put on the Refrigerator from Renovatio, all these poems that don't have line breaks but have these short little statements and phrases. I've been doing that since I was a kid, and that has to do with the fact that I want it to be a very fast-paced poem. That is intentional. So a lot of poems that I write these days have the same feel before I get to edit them. But those things are intentional in that sense. Like The Last Day in Notes on a Return, that's intentional to be like that, so it could be a fast-paced poem.
Gotcha. So you also mentioned a lot New York, and When the City Sleeps has a lot to do with New York. So
that's the whole point.
Yeah. So talk to me about the entire New York influence, especially the 5 boroughs.
Yeah. So when I started writing.
Wait. Before continuing, how about them Knicks?
What are you talking about them for? The fuck? We talking about trauma now? What are we talking about?
I just gotta say it, man. Gotta say it.
I'm a Yankee fan. How about that? Okay. Everything the Knicks did was counterbalanced with the greatness of my New York Yankees. The late '90s is only matched by the mid '90s Bulls and the fucking Patriots and maybe the Spurs because they won 5 titles every other year. Like it was ridiculous how much they won. or the Lakers, right? Kobe's Lakers, Duncan's Spurs, right? Brady's Patriots and Jordan's Bulls are the only ones coming close to the Yankee dynasty, right? So the Yankees treated me well. So when I started writing When the City Sleeps, I was already writing that when I was finishing Pelo Bueno. So in Pelo Bueno, these particular poems, One Man's Fight for Love, Rojas, Basquiat, and I think Life Untitled. All those 4 or 5 poems were written in the same batch as in front of the class. So when my editor was like, "Do you have any more poems?" I was like, "Yeah." I sent them all these new poems because I was living in Chicago at the time, and everyone I hung out with in Chicago was a writer. So it really pushed the pen forward, like really fast, and really like I was really like, yeah, I was writing all the time in Chicago. So this is 2001, 2002, and 2003. This is the Chicago time period. My editor gets these poems, and he says, "Okay, cool. I'll take most of these, but in front of the class, let's leave that for your next book." And it was interesting he said that because that has a really particular sense of foresight that I don't know if I was using at the time, but because I was like, "Oh, I didn't just pull these poems out now," you know. So I started working on this manuscript, right? Because I kept looking at all these books, and they were all thematic. They all had themes to it. And Pelo Bueno doesn't really have a theme. Pelo Bueno just is a nice collection of work, and it's really young and stuff like that. But then the next one was I was going to write this book, and the poems in it were going to be all these poems about cities that I had visited already. So by 2002, 2003, I went to Cuba in 97 as a 19-year-old. I went to Paris in 2000 as a 22-year-old. I went to a bunch of states on the East Coast. I went to Puerto Rico in 99 on my own, which was the first time I went there as an adult. My boy was doing a semester at Rio Piedras. That was right around the time Hurricane George came in. I was actually in Puerto Rico right before, like a day or two before he hit. And like, you know, and I moved out of New York, which is a big deal. So I had all these like poems I wanted to write. And then I was reading, I'm pretty sure I was reading Garcia Lorca's Poet in New York, and which is one of my favorite poetry books. And I'm reading it, and I'm reading how he's describing New York in this like kind of cold, dank, and still very surrealist nature, and doing a comparison between Andalusia or Madrid and New York, and talking about how magical, like, you know, Spain is. So When the City Sleeps is an answer to anyone who thinks that New York isn't magical. You know, that there's so much like magic, and I use the word magic loosely, right? But there are so many things you can find in New York. You just have to give yourself the time to like really find it, and you become a different person. If you're not from New York, you become a very different person when you move to New York. I know people who say they live in San Francisco or they live in LA, and they go home after work and they stay home, and they're kind of like, this, I'm good with this. The minute they move to New York, they become entrenched in going out every night and being on a scene, and, you know, becoming this whole new person that they wouldn't be because they didn't grow up in New York. So I tell people, when I go to New York, I stay home a lot. You know, I chill, I relax. I don't really go out to bars like I used to, like I did when I was younger. But when I go to different cities, like San Francisco, like LA, like Chicago, like anywhere, yeah, I go out all the time. And it's because it's not my city, so I'm still looking for things. So When the City Sleeps, you know, a lot of it was, let me write these poems about the Bronx, right? The boroughs, right? Let me write these poems about the Bronx, because everyone thinks the Bronx is this like movie scene where people get shot and robbed. And I'm like, we have gone, the Bronx has gone through so many obstacles and bad politicians that, right? Like, I'm surprised we still are who we are, And whenever I hear people say, the Bronx, I'm just like, if they're not from New York, like, what do people know about the Bronx besides the movies and the music? Right? And sometimes these things are hyperboles. They're not real. Like, they're metaphors. They're fantasy. They're fiction. Right? Unless they're based on a true story, then that's a whole different thing, right? Like, but then when I look at the rest of the boroughs, right? They all have this very certain identity. Like, Manhattan is Manhattan. It's the island, right? It's this really overbuilt, populated space. But it's one of the best places to ever walk. The longest walk I've ever done, well, let me rephrase that shit. It might be the second one. But one of the longest walks I ever did was in Manhattan, on Broadway, from Dyckman to Broadway and Lafayette, which is over 10 miles probably. But I was young. I was like 16, 17. I could do that shit in my sleep. I did another one in LA. I walked like 10 miles in LA, which everyone thought I was crazy because you don't walk in LA like that. But with Broadway, I could try to do that all the time. I mean, a lot of it's different, right? Like, when I was younger, I thought my body could do anything. Now, I just go, let me jump on a train and get downtown, sit on a bench for 2 hours. But the walk, the Broadway walk is such a good one because there's so much, like, you see the neighborhoods change, you see how, not necessarily, like, I don't look at it as money, but I look at it as, like, culture, like, what culture is dominating that particular neighborhood, right? Broadway cuts through Dyckman, which is a Dominican neighborhood, Washington Heights, which is a Dominican neighborhood, and then it turns into, like, a panhandle. Like, when it's cutting through Harlem, Broadway's still very Dominican, but the blocks around it are very Harlemish. And then you cut down into, now it's like Harlem World. You see the projects and you see everything. And when you go up Broadway, then you're at Columbia University. Then it becomes the Upper West Side, and it becomes this like real, like, very different kind of feel. But there's still pockets of Black and Puerto Ricans off of Broadway on Amsterdam and Columbus that they've been there their whole life, but no one ever talks about that. Right? One of my closest friends, the one who went to Puerto Rico in '99, he's from 106 in Amsterdam, which is predominantly not considered a Puerto Rican neighborhood, even though it is. Right? Black and Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, right? And so that's what When the City Sleeps was, right? It was my relationship with these boroughs. Brooklyn, I cut my teeth from Brooklyn when I started doing poetry. After that reading at B. Dalton's, I didn't really go to the New Eurekan unless it was a hip hop thing, but actual open mics was every Sunday at this spot called Frank's Lounge, which I just heard they're trying to demolish it now. But I was there for about a year cutting my chops. And the importance of this particular venue is that this had the whole Brooklyn, like, poetry scene, like the whole Black Bohemia network that was there. And it was like me, this Puerto Rican kid from the Bronx. Like, Willie came through once in a blue. And, like, this one other, like, dude. But I was, like, one of the few Puerto Ricans that was there. But that scene included Jessica Care Moore, Saul Williams, this group called Second to Last Poets, Brad Warren, Ty Allen. There's a lot of people that came out of that as poets, and then like DJs and musicians. Like, bro, like, I saw Erykah Badu there at a little ass venue on the second floor, basically singing half of Baduism. And I have witnesses for this. The very first song when she sings Pick Your Afro Daddy, she sang it to me first. And I have receipts for that, so don't come at me because I'm not lying. This is real talk. Because my fro was big, my shit was real, and it was like it was cool because here's this new love of mine with poetry, and when they were done, it was like a house jam, and I loved house music, so like I was there for like about a year, like just like my first feature was there. It was Afro Picks and Poetry Scripts. That was the name of my little show. And I did an intro with a Portishead instrumental, right? Because they were like cool people knew who Portishead was, but not some random ass dude on the block. And I didn't really have too many words. I had poems though. I had things that were cool, but the I Am piece was dope. The graffiti writer piece was already set before I was 22. That was like the one poem people wanted to hear. But when the City Sleeps came through, it was just more about the city, right? So that love for Brooklyn is there, but also that critique of Brooklyn is there too, because they did let Brooklyn go to waste with gentrification. Queens has a really interesting relationship with me because like I've dated a lot of girls in Queens, so it just becomes like this long ass train ride. It's like Queens and the Bronx is like going from Mayagüez West to Ponce, like it's right there, but it's not right there. Like if there was like a straight highway that got you there in 20 minutes, you would be happy with that. But instead, you have to go all the way around, and it's like just too fucking long. To get to Queens from the Bronx, you have to go into Manhattan, regardless. If you're taking a bus or you're taking a train, you have to go into Manhattan first. And that's always because I don't drive, so I wasn't trying to take the car to the other side of the borough just to cross over a $10 bridge. And you know, there's some poems on When the City Sleeps that I still love. Like I love like Holler. Like I love Holler, because Holler was exactly what it sounds like. It was this homage to Ginsberg and Howl, and I read how he put the poem together, and I modeled it after that. And yeah, it's a 15-minute poem to read, which is why I don't read it that much. Maybe I'll do it soon and put it up on SoundCloud. But the first time I remember reading it out loud, because I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I had it printed on like a 12 by 35 roll piece of paper, like really nice paper. I had this guy put up for me, and I read it for this. I think it was a celebration for Miguel Algarin, which for me felt appropriate. Like, okay, cool. But of course, here's a 15-minute poem that people have to sit through. When I was done with that, I had to like go to the corner and like take a breath because my brain was vibrating. Everything was vibrating in my head because it was such a long poem. And but yeah, there's so many poems in there that I'm grateful for because they really pushed me forward to just to get better. Like Basquiat in Pelo Bueno was the reason I got invited to do Def Poetry Jam, but I knew that in front of the class was going to be that piece, not Basquiat. Because if you don't know who Basquiat is, you don't give two shits. So I did that first when I did Def Poetry Jam, but then when I did in front of the class, bro, I gave that shit everything. I thought, like most of us said that, yeah, when you ended up on Def Poetry Jam, it felt like the Poetry Nationals and you were going for the top spot. Yeah. So that was, and that was like right that filmed in 2003. But it aired in 2004. So by the time it aired, I was already back in New York, and Pelo Bueno had came out, and I took a sabbatical for poetry, but I already had a bulk of what was When the City Sleeps before it came out in 2012. I went back to the manuscript in 2009 and gave myself a couple more years. So yeah, Pelo Bueno came out in 2012, January 1st.
Gotcha. Now that you mentioned the Def Jam poetry experience, how was that like?
It was like it was cool. Like I think the best part about it was that you saw so many people that you knew and barely ever got to see if it wasn't for nationals. And if you didn't go to nationals, then it was like, right? So when the first season came out, I was living with a poet from Chicago who was invited to read. So he was like, yo, let's roll. We'll go to New York and give you my +1. So if you look at the first season, right, I had just cut my hair off, so you won't see a big haired dude in the front row. But I'm in the front row with like a red and blue sweater, I think. And I have like a little short sleeve because I had just cut my hair off in that summer. So I've been to a lot of the tapings. My biggest thing was like this weird bias of it being just New York poets. Even though I'm from New York, but I wasn't living there, so like we didn't get scouted the same way. So when what ended up happening was we heard the some of the folks were in town. Like I knew some of the folks were in town, and it was like Lemon and Suhair came to one of the shows. Came to my show. But mind you, I've known Lemon since 94, and I've known Suhair since 94. I've known them for years before any of this happened, right? So there's a certain camaraderie, and she loved Basquiat, and they were like, "Yo, we'll put you on the show." I was like, "Ah, whatever." But in my head, it was like, "Just get me in the door." That's all I ever tell people to do. Get me in the door, I'll do the rest. Because, right, like I can put you to the door, but if you trash, you trash. I can't help you with that. So when I read, when it was my day to read, I was cracking jokes with Mos Def because I knew Mos from Brooklyn, right? You knew Mos because he was always around, and we were cordial and we were cool. So he was like, he asked me, he told me I couldn't wear it, and they told me I couldn't wear it. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And he was like, you have a nice blazer. I was like, yeah, I like yours too. We can trade if you want. I know his cost a lot more than mine did. And that's why in the beginning of the video, we go in so hard with the pound, right? With our dap. We went hard because we were already cracking jokes the whole time. And, it was dope. I think for me, it was cool because it was like, oh, dope, I'm on TV, that's dope, right? Doing poetry. For my mom, I think it was something else, right? For her, it was like, oh, shit, look at him. He's not just talking shit out here. He actually did something, and like my sister rented out this restaurant on the concourse, and we had a viewing, and it was cool. Like it was really interesting, just having that kind of exposure. But the reality of it is, like, after that air, like I had to go back to work. I didn't go on tour after Def Poetry aired. I think I tried out. I had been on 2 different slam teams the 2 years before. One was New York City, one of the New York City teams for Union Square, and the other one was Chicago. But John was born in 2003, so it was cool. But I had to go back to work. I had a newborn I had to take care of. So I'm not saying I missed my boat on that because I don't think I did. But I know I didn't have the same. What's the word? Same options open up to me, so it was cool. I mean, those things are things you examine. You examine later, like how people work with you and what they. Oh, I can help you do this. Okay, I've been here before, so let me know what you can do. But that's also goes back. That kind of also reflects on why I work on my own so much. I put tours together on my own. I put books out, right? Like, it's because if you wait around for somebody. And same thing like you don't wait around for anybody. You put something together, you put it out, and that's it. Because in 10, 20 years, no one's going to give 2 shits about, honestly, who put it out. They're just going to say just how many books that person has. Right? Because if for example, like Tony Medina, who I love to death, who one of my favorites, he had a book called No News is Good News. But that publishing company doesn't exist anymore. So the only way you can find a copy is by buying it online. But he's not going to say that in his bio. He's going to say, I have this book out. So a lot of it, when I started looking at how people, it's like when you graduate. Yeah, you might put where you graduate on your first book, but you're probably not going to put it on your second or third book. Right? So it's how long you're going to be in this road, how long you're going to be on it, and like what's important to you. So those are the things that I look at in that sense. But no, that poetry still, man, still. I mean, I read that poem a lot. I still read it because I still believe in that poem. And I think that was the biggest. That's probably the biggest thing I started noticing was, I wasn't that young. I was like in my mid-20s, which was cool. Like, I already cut my teeth pretty well in different cities. I had finally gone to California. Did some shows out there. Like, I was putting my mark on things. But if I was 18 or 19 and got on that show and I read a poem that I hate right now, oh man, that would eat me up a bit. That would eat me up because there's some poems that you just don't like anymore. I enjoy every piece, but I'm not gonna read compilation of a heartbreak every time I have a reading. 1, because I don't want to keep talking about that. But 2, because it's fucking emotional, it's draining,
Yeah.
But yeah, Def Poetry was a good moment. It was a good moment, and I'm grateful for it. And the internet, man, the internet lets you live forever.
Holy hell, yeah.
I was like, man, look at those jeans. Look at those flared jeans I had on. Look at that cutie with his chucks. I haven't changed my dress style since I put shoes on now. That shirt, man, I love that shirt. I don't even know what happened to that shirt. But you can tell I'm young because I don't button all the way to the top like I do now. See what I mean? That's how you know.
Yeah.
That's how you know. But no, it was dope, man. There's a lot of people there. You know, some people I thought should have been on it, weren't on it, but it's okay. Some of my favorite people are on that show.
Dope. So you mentioned the fact that you do. Well, let's leave this for later. But you mentioned your family, and that is a big topic in a lot of your poems. So talk to me the role your mother and father had, your sister had, and now how your son has a role in your poetry.
So, man, I think one of the biggest things is you always want your child, right? You always want your child to enjoy your work. Right? You always want the people you care about to enjoy your work, right? So I started writing John in as a protagonist in some of my poems, or a person I'm talking to in When the City Sleeps, because if you look at Pelo Bueno, like, he's not in it because he wasn't here yet, right? So that's always like a joke. I'm like, don't worry, you got a poem and everything else. Relax, it's not that serious. And my own complicated situation, my own complicated relationship with my father deals with a lot of these poems that I'm dealing with John, right? And I think it was Open Letters to John Pablo was in When the City Sleeps. That was definitely a little more metaphor heavy, even though John Pablo Rojas is a comet crashing into the sky. That's nothing but metaphors. But yeah, I think it puts me in a particular place of how I was when my son was being born. It's November of 2003 in Chicago, and it's like kind of cold, and I remember being at the intersection of Clark and Diversity, which is like a really major intersection in Chicago, and just standing on the corner and like, yo, my son's about to be born soon. I think that this is like an hour or two. I went to the store real quick. It was like an hour or two before he was born, and it's yeah, it really is just having him be proud of me, because he said it once. He was younger though, so I don't know if it counts now, he's a teenager. But he said it once. He thought it was cool that I was a poet. That's what meant a lot, right? Because you're not supposed to like what your parents do too much. But yeah, no, and when I still have a bunch of poems that I'm gonna write about him. Maybe I'll stop when he's 21 or something. As a present, I'll start writing these little mushy poems about you. But these things are testaments to they're testaments to him, and they're definitely love letters to my son. That's the thing. Like I tell my son I love him all the time, but I think poems are just different. All right, you can tell someone you love them all the time. You send them a love letter, or you write something about them. It does make someone feel a different way. But yeah, that's it. I mean, he's important. He's important. He's one of the first people I want to impress with something. Even when he was younger and didn't really know what was going on, didn't matter. Like, he's gonna read it eventually, I want him to be like, wow, this poem's really good, back. It's things like that. Simple things like that. Same thing with the record. When we finished the record, he's seen the band play a couple times, and he was at the release party for When the City Sleeps for the record, and he was I called him playing air drums, and I was like, that's all I cared about. Even someone at the bar that we did the show at, they're like, oh, why'd you do it today? Why don't you do it another day? I was like, nope, he leaves tomorrow, or he leaves in 2 days, so I want to make sure that he sees the band play like full, and the band was like in full. Like we had the drummer that we always have. We had a full unit. You know, it was good because my drummer's good, so he liked it. So that's it. So we just try to impress him and make him, make him know I think about him in these situations.
Gotcha. And how about your parents and your sister? How have they inspired you or play a big role in your work?
I really haven't written a poem for my sister yet, and I will eventually. I do mention her in a bunch of things, but I think the biggest thing is trying to make it justice, right? The two poems I think that have been the hardest for me to write about is the poem by my sister and Hendrix poem. I've gone through so many drafts trying to really capture how I'm feeling and not make it sound forced. And that was the biggest thing with those two pieces. My mom, my father was easy. My father had to do with just me trying to deal with the overarching relationship I had with him. But with my mom, when I wrote all those poems about her in notes to return to the island, it was cool because they weren't just a mix of me being sad because of her health. La Bata is a really funny poem, and that's that's probably one of the funniest poems I ever read, especially because I read it in her voice. I think it was great for me and for her to see it in the book. Because she sees these poems, but she knows why I write the poems with my father and my son. She knows that. I think she liked the poem I wrote about John in that book, the Rojas Comet one. She liked that one a lot. And, I think it's important, these people shape your lives, for the better and for the worse. I don't outright, I say that before I say something, I'll say something they don't dominate what I write about, but yet one of my next books is about my mother and my father. It's these, I have all these poems, I'm just going to pay homage to them, because they both did very different things for me in my life. But my mom, the book was about to be all about my mom. But some of these poems are heart wrenching, and I don't know if I want to read all those poems all the time. Hey everybody, here's a tour. I'm gonna read these poems about my dead mother all the time. No, that's just not. That's not. No, for me it's too much. So if I read it now, I think the book's gonna be about both my parents. They both had nicknames. My father's nickname was Lefty, and my mom's nickname was Fela. His real name was Miguel, and hers was Felicita. So at least hers makes sense. But he was left-handed, which is why I called him that. But they played their foundation, right? They're pillars. They're pillars of your life. I'm not saying that every parent is, because some parents are trash, but the ones that make an influence on you, you pay homage to them.
Obligado. So, something that's also very, very important about your work, especially with the new book, is that you talk about Puerto Rico and the relationship between Puerto Rico with politics, history, and New York. So, talk to me about how Puerto Rico and everything about it plays a big role in your work. Además de que you're Puerto Rican.
Well, we're literally towards the anniversary of my first trip to Puerto Rico, which was with Professor Iridari, and I look at my little Facebook memories, and I think last week was the anniversary when I went to colegio. And the reason I bring that up is because 2015 was the first time I went to Puerto Rico in 8 years. Well, it was that, and it was also the fact that it was the first time I went as a poet. All the other times I went as just a visitor and, just a Puerto Rican kid from New York going to PR. So they started creating these series of poems that were reintroductions, right? They were reintroductions. They were new discoveries, right? Today's picture from 2015 was me standing in front of La Puerta de Viejo San Juan, but it was still in red, white, and blue. It wasn't in black yet. So I was like, oh, look at that, right? So like these little things that they remind you is actually pretty cool. But, you know, my relationship with Puerto Rico, man, you know, I've been dealing with my relationship with Puerto Rico since I was a kid. You know, most people don't know that I lived in Puerto Rico until I was 6. I lived in Levittown, you know, close to Bayamon. I lived in Levittown for about 6 years. Every summer after that, until I was 11, I stayed in Bayamon in Loma Verde with my aunt, with my grand aunt. And, you know, I had to, like, those were some of the first times, you know, kids are calling me gringo because I was, you know, like this real pale-ass white kid, you know, from the Bronx, so even though I was Puerto Rican. And, you know, you just want friends when you go on these summer vacations. You don't care what people call you. You just suck it up and keep playing. When I got older, though, you know, there's so many, like, conflicting situations, right? Like, I wasn't Puerto Rican enough, right, for other Puerto Ricans. You know, I didn't dance salsa. I barely ever listened to salsa on my own. And, you know, like, everyone thought I was like this white boy. And I'm just like, you know, we're the same complexion, right? I don't understand what you're talking about. But, you know, my relationship with rock and roll, I think, obviously, was very different for that particular generation. So when I started writing these poems about Puerto Rico, I mean, there's much for me reaffirming my identity as being a Puerto Rican man who was raised in New York, who identifies as a Nuyorican poet, not as a Nuyorican, but as a Nuyorican poet, someone who's in that school of art, and it's come, you know, and like, trust me, I was very surprised with myself, and I know a lot of people were too, that I wrote a book about Puerto Rico, because it just wasn't something that was on my radar before these trips happened. And that's why, I mean, so remember, if my first trip was March 23rd, I think, 2015, and the book was out by June 1st, 2017, all the poems in notes were written in a 2-year span. Actually, yeah, a year and a half, 2 years, and the footnotes was written the same year it was published. But the footnotes was also written the same time that the campuses were closed down after takeovers. Because I was in both. I was in Colegio when it happened. I was in Rio Piedras when it happened, and then I went to Colegio the next day. So like I had a lot more time to like really work on the footnote section. And you know, it's those trips were impactful, right? Gave me a whole, again, same thing like I said earlier, gave me this whole new set of like this circle of friends, right? These people I see 3-4 times a year for, you know, 3-4 years straight. You know, that's more than I see people around here. In New York, like I'll see my best friend once a year. Here, I see you 3 times a year for like 2-3 years in a row. My boy's like, what's going on? I go, no, I just came back from Puerto Rico. So, you know, and so it started developing this interesting narrative where everyone thought I lived there or I was always there. So everyone approaches me like, you in New York? I was like, yeah, you know, I'm okay with that. But I was just telling someone this earlier today, you know, before Hurricane Maria, I was really contemplating living in Puerto Rico for about 6 months straight. And I know for some people that might not be a lot, but that's a lot for a New Yorker to like just go somewhere to stay. The last time I stayed out of New York that long was when I lived in Chicago. You know, I spent 2 months in London last year, and you know, you get homesick for a certain amount of time. But yeah, I was gonna go to my grandmother's house in Huanica. That's where my mom is from, and it would have been interesting, right? Because it's like, bro, Huanica is a little bit of the campo, and it's like, how you gonna get around? I was like, I don't know. You gotta bribe people to come pick you up and shit, and take you off the mountain, and you know, to go to the beach or some shit. But then when Maria happened, I was like, oh well, let's see what happens next. But then when my mom passed away, I was like, well, no, that's not gonna happen now. So it was. And I tell people that it doesn't matter where I was living at. After my mom passed away, I would have ended up in New York right afterwards. And it took me some time to like get reacclimated and doing shows, stuff like that, and going, hey, I had this poem about my mom, and it's like this heart-wrenching poem. I'm like, okay, maybe I don't want to read this all the time. I'm still trying to come to terms with it. Well, a lot of it has to do with, do I want to read those poems in public or not? That's really what it is. They invited me down to read this the celebration for this Puerto Rican organization called Pro Libertad. So I went. I read a top of the motto, fantastic. And I read it for my mom, and I was like, wow, I really sucked all the energy out of this crowd. Sorry. Like, I know you guys want to clap, but it's okay. Don't worry about it. You'll get over it. But Notes, yeah, I love Notes. I think Notes has some of the best work I ever wrote. It's definitely the best looking book that I have too. And when I redesign all the other books, they're gonna look like that. I might even include a footnote section. I don't know yet. I don't know how I want to do all that work sometimes, honestly. But all three books, Renovatio is very different than all the other books, and so it lives in a really weird situation of like, here are these popular poems from When the City Sleeps. Here's these popular poems from the Notes, and I'm like, hey, can I read this piece from Renovatio? They're like, if you want to, fine. I was like, what? Come on, no. But one thing about Renovatio that will come to surface eventually is that whole last chapter where there's so many poems that have song titles in it that I got from song titles, right? Just as the Day Was Dawning, The Talking Horse, The Highways for Gamblers, there was Burn Down the House, The Cave. Those are all song titles. That was the exercise I was doing during like the 30 for 30 thing, and I said either I'm gonna make it be exactly what the title says, or have nothing to do with the title. And out of all those, just as the Day Was Dawning is I love reading that poem because you slow everything down. I mean, people close their eyes and just be grateful, right? A lot of it's about being great. I think that's what the whole book is about. Is how do you reinvent yourself through art and through poetry, and just being grateful that you even got to that point, right? The Cave is about my son, right? Which, if you never read it, then you figure it out, right? The Cave is about my son. Burning Down the House is literally about what happens when your house is burning down. Like, what are you gonna take? I like reading that poem. That poem is good. The Talking Horse is a really strange poem I wrote about a talking horse, and how horses talk to each other about, like, do they believe in like a Jesus Christ horse, right? They don't think it's a black stallion. A black stallion is a Jesus Christ horse, And those poems were one day people will get it. They're like, oh, you want to read that poem? Oh, God. I'm like, fine. Let's read top of the mohor for you. Give me the hard political stuff, Bo. Sure, fine.
Está bien.
Fine, I'll give you guys what you want.
Yeah. So, this is a perfect transition to the next question. As we've talked about, music has a lot of inspiration in your work, but other forms of pop culture also play a big role. So, talk to me about pop culture, anime, movies, how it all plays a big role in your work. When I think about, one of the things that I think about when it comes to pop culture, right, when people look at it in some weird light, I just think it expands the imagination, right? It's all about imagination. Like, if someone tells me they don't like watching movies, I look at them like they're kind of strange. Before I went back to work and I had like a regular job again, I went to the movies like twice a week. I'll see the same movie twice. When I landed one time in Puerto Rico, I went straight to the movie theater to go see Dragon Ball Super Broly. Literally. I dropped my shit off and went to the movie theaters in San Juan. I was like, oh, it's already here? Fantastic. I dropped my shit off and go get my ticket. And people were like, oh, I'm not really a movie person. That doesn't make sense to me.
or if they have boring taste in music. And I tell people you can't have I can tell you have boring taste in music. But if I go to your house and you have like 3 CDs, you have boring taste in music because I don't know what. Like, if you really love something, you're going to get it. You're going to buy that shit and own it. That's why I don't like BitTorrent. You know, when you BitTorrent a record and stuff like that, you're still going to buy it. I have torrented at least half of Radiohead's records, and I still bought those records physically. I even bought a deluxe version for Radiohead's last record, the Moonshaped Pool. Yeah. I bought a deluxe version, and it had a piece of actual audio tape they used in the studio. And, you know, when you love a band, when a band has given you that much, you know, that much, man, what's the word? Emotional spectrum in their work. No, man, it's like, how do you not? Like, how do you not, like, man, how do you not love music? Like, if I always wonder if my mom had more money when I was 12 or 13, would have she bought me a guitar earlier? Because I didn't get my first guitar until I was like 17 or 18. And, you know, to me that's really late because, you know, lack of a better word, I'm out like running around being a theater industry. Like, I wasn't trying to stay home and play guitar. That would have been me at 15 though. Maybe 14. But, you know, those kind of things are things you have to think about because it's like, yo, do you have that kind of money for those things? But with pop culture, man, yeah, but it stems from music, right? It stems from music because what I wanted to learn about everything stemmed with me trying to learn everything about these records that I was listening to. So when I really got into movies was probably when I could take myself to the movies, right? I was like probably 18 or 19. I did see a bunch of movies with my sister and with my mom growing up. The first, man, dating it. So I think the first movie I ever saw in the theater was probably E.T. Whoa. It was a family film, and I think I remember coming at the theater like, whoa, what was that? Crying and shit. And he left. Right? It was probably E.T. But even after that. So there was a theater that, you know, I've wrote about once here in the Bronx called Lowe's Paradise. And it was a really old school theater. I think it only had like 4 movies at a time. So they used to do these double features on the weekends. So you pay for both, and then you stay and watch one, and you watch the other one. So one wonderful year, they were doing Transformers the movie, the animated movie, and Running Scared with Billy Crystal and Gregory Hines, which was a good movie actually. I think I saw it when I got older. And I enjoyed both of them because they were funny together. So we see it, a bunch of kids are there. They played Transformers the movie 5 times before Running Scared got to put on. And we stayed the whole time, and I'm like screaming every time the intro comes in. Transformers! More than meets the eye. Don't let me put on my TV, it's already on. And, you know, like, that was it. Like, I know we shouldn't say we feel bad for other generations, but you guys aren't going to get Saturday cartoons like we did. I was completely obsessed with cartoons, right? With Transformers, even with G.I. Joe, Thundercats, Silverhawks, G-Force, Robotech, He-Man, She-Ra, what else? There's so many. I mean, there's so many possible cartoons, but you know, these all they did was add to my imagination, right? And that's something that I tell people, that this is what you theoretically have to do on your own, is you have to cultivate your imagination. So before any of that, before all that, I used to read a lot of Greek mythology as a kid. I read a lot of books as a kid before I got into high school. I read a lot of books. So like I read, you know, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, you know, a lot of Greek mythology. If I was 12 when Harry Potter came out, I would have read all those cover to cover like it was nothing. Easy. easy. And I think with adding that extra emotional spectrum that rock music has, that hip hop doesn't really have. Hip hop gets a little more aggressive, makes you want to get hyped. Rock music doesn't always do that, makes you cry, right? So when it comes down to pop culture, when I really started like cultivating that part of it, it stems from music first. But then the first anime I saw was let me think. You know what? I'll give it to Akira because Akira is my favorite. I've seen Akira in every possible format. I've seen it in a movie theater. I had it on VHS. I have it on DVD. I have a Blu-ray closed in my house. I don't even own a Blu-ray, but you just have to buy it because it's Akira, right? It is still the best. Doesn't matter what it is. Like I was just talking to someone recently about that with Samuel from Libros Hace.
Yeah.
He was like, "Yo, is there a better anime movie than Akira?" And I was like, "No, there isn't. There isn't. Ghost in the Shell, I will put number 2, and only because I don't separate the Miyazaki films. I just don't. I think the content is different. Like I love Howl's Moving Castle, and I love Princess Mononoke, and I love Spirited Away, but that's not Akira, bro. Akira is giving you nightmares if you don't know what the hell you're signing up for. If you're too young watching that shit, and Tetsuo's body explodes, and you're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Right? I've gotten that face from people like, what are you showing us? I was like, this is the best part, bro. Did you know that I for the intro for the band, we haven't done it in a while, but we did. Well, yeah, I think we did do that in Puerto Rico. Like my intro now is one of the Akira songs. The big bong.
Dope.
Bong.
Yeah.
I edited that shit out. Yeah, I think we did do it in Puerto Rico. I'm pretty sure. But we did it at the New Yorican when we had the show. And of course people were looking at us like we're crazy. But the only reason why we do it now is because my drummer is also a huge anime fan. And so is my guitar player. Right? So it's a really interesting thing that connects some of us in the band. Because, I still do this 1 minute, like, here's all this, these images. And, like, if you look at YouTube, so some of the earlier shows from 3 years ago, yeah, we play whole shows with animation going on in the background. And sometimes it's distracting, but I don't give a fuck. I'm like, whatever, like, big deal. But anime, no, man, so you look at that, right? So you look at Akira, you look at Ghost in the Shell, Ninja Scroll, Vampire Hunter D, Spree Gun, right? You look at those, but I was old enough and I had cable when the first run of Dragon Ball Z was on Toonami. Bro, I fucking didn't leave the house. Mom was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I gotta watch the show. She's like, okay, whatever. And then, like, when it's gone, I run back downtown and be a fucking tarantula. Be a tita in the street. And, but that was it, man. Like, cartoons are just amazing, man. I don't know what people be talking about. So, like, my brother-in-law has 9 siblings. The one closest to my age, him and I are really close. His son texted me one time because I put, they announced the new season of Bleach for the final arc, finally, which I'm really excited for. His son texted me, goes, you watch anime? I was like, I've been watching anime since before you were born. What are you talking about? Anime is not a young person's game at this point. It's all of us, goddammit. And, I think it allows a lot of just, freedom, right? I was really surprised when I went to PR and, like, all these kids are, doing cosplay and, like, really animate out. But I understand, right? You live in this island that has really, really conservative, religious, Republican undertones sometimes, and you're just like, what? And what's the farthest thing from being Puerto Rican sometimes? Being some Japanese kid from Okinawa or some shit. Like those things, trust me, they're not lost in a lot of us. Just, I think with New York is different because since we have a Chinatown, we just go pick our shit up and go back uptown and just be nerds in our house. So like with anime, like that's that, because if you consider Dragon Ball anime, then yeah, I've been watching anime since '92. you know. But then even that, like, you know, Silverhawks and Thundercats, even though they were American cartoons, they definitely weren't designed like American cartoons. But then, you know, like, and then like further exploring, the bottom line is that I love science fiction and fantasy. Like, I love science fiction and fantasy. And when you take like, you know, my love for Star Wars, right? My obsessive love for Star Wars, my obsessive love for Marvel and DC. So with comic books, I started collecting comic books when I was like 9 or 10. There was a little shop that would put some comics on the side. So when me and my mom would go by, she would just pick them up for me. But eventually, you know, the biggest thing with comics is trying to keep up with having expendable income to buy comics. Sometimes you just don't have it. So I didn't get back into comics until the original Civil War, House of M, and Brian Bendis' run on Marvel. From Disassembled all the way to like his last run. I forgot what his last run was in Marvel. But all that, right? So like from Disassembled, Civil War, House of M, which was like mid '05. Yeah, I've been just keeping in contact with things, looking at Hickman's run on Fantastic Four, Hickman's run on the Avengers, which themes in the second Secret Wars, and then to like the whole new thing they do now. Now the only thing I'm reading for comics are the X-Men's, all the mutant stuff, and the last one they did for DC, the Deceased storyline, it was okay. It wasn't that bad. Let's see what they come with afterwards. But Batman Who Laughs was an amazing storyline. I thought it was great. Metal was kind of boring, but at least you got this amazing character out of it. But the mutant line that Hickman is doing and everything else on that leads the Powers of X and House of X was great. And the next storyline I think is called Dawn of X. Yeah, that's all I'm reading right now in that sense. But you know, like I've you know, when you talk about like animated comic movies, I've seen them all. I probably own them all. You know, but those things, you know. But then you think about you know, Naruto, Bleach. You know, I've seen all those episodes. You know, and sometimes it's just giving yourself time. You know, time enough to just like sit down and go, okay, cool. You know what? Let me watch this. I mean, granted, I'm never gonna watch One Piece all the way through. Too many fucking episodes.
That's what I was gonna ask.
No, man, come on, it's like 925 right now, I think. So my boy reads the manga. He goes, yeah, reading is easier, but to start from scratch, that's the whole year, bro. I can sit here and do math for you. Like that's 200, and that's a lot. That's a lot of shit. Let me see. It's 900. I'm doing it right now. 925 times 24.10. Right, something like that. That's 22,000 minutes, bro. 22,000 minutes. And when you divide that by, say, 24 hours, it's 928 possible days of like watching one episode. And yeah. So, you know, but a lot of like Boruto, I have to get back into it. I saw exactly where I wanted to start. I want to go back into it. But I still watch, you know, My Hero Academia. You know, a lot of these people are like, wow, but you're so old to watch it. I go, I'm sorry, I don't know it was a date. Granted, My Hero Academia shouldn't have been something I wanted to watch, but it is actually. Because of, I do have, like, not guidelines, but sometimes I'm like, look, I can't keep watching these shows, these little kids. I just can't, because I'm just going to scream at them for doing something stupid. But which is the other one that I watch?
Did you get into JoJo and all that stuff?
No, but like, you know, JoJo's always there, right? It's like,
yeah,
I can get the JoJo whenever I want. It's so much available. But there was another one that I'm like One Piece, man. I just finished watching. It was either yesterday or the day before. I watched all the second season again because I like One Punch Man. One Punch Man was so funny. It was so good.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's One Punch Man, My Hero Academia, Dragon Ball Heroes. I still stay on top of it. Really, and there's a whole new storyline. I can't wait for the next season of Dragon Ball Super. Yeah, I forgot what was the other one. But, you know, so those are, and, you know, like I still go into like a Naruto movie here and there.
Those
But
are
yeah,
just a few.
I just think pop culture. You know, I bet some people think that it's it's kind of like throwaway information. I don't think so. I think it allows you, because the thing is, the way I can talk about pop culture is the same way I can talk about politics and activism. Oh, Hunter x Hunter. I just finished that whole thing. That was great. Did you watch? I love Hunter x Hunter. I thought Gong and Killua were really good characters. I was really happy with. And I watched the second one, the 2011 reboot, not the original. So I got the Chimera Ants. Yeah, that shit was it was great. Bro, it was fantastic. And it's same way. I think the way some of us use anime, the same way some people use religion. They use church. It's something to make the day better. To make, if you're having a hard time, yeah, you know what, go scream at Goku because he just that stupid, right? Like go to Naruto, always talking about ramen, and then his son likes burgers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's these little things, these little nuances that, for me, I do know that my love for these things also makes me more adaptable to talk to people who are much younger than me. That's all we could talk about. And people who are younger than me or slightly older have no clue what we're talking about. And it's like, look, I get it. You have a really boring father who doesn't want to watch anything. Like me, I know all these things. I told my son that once. We were in some. He went to some school trip in DC, and I went down to see him. And we're walking on some big lawn, and he does like a jitsu, like a Naruto jitsu. And like his friends are looking at him smiling. I was like, John, be careful. You're gonna hurt somebody if you do that jitsu. His friends go, does your father know what a jitsu is? He looks down, he's like, my father's the one who got me put on to Naruto. I was like, damn right. I watched all those episodes for this kid, he knew what the fuck he was doing. His mom don't let him watch shit. And but these are little things that may seem small, but this is the same thing me and my father have with baseball. Like, I love baseball. Like, for a kid who was an artsy rock me, I love sports. And that's, again, these things allow me to talk to anybody. Right? I could talk to some dude who hates everything I hate. The minute we talk about the Knicks, he's like, bro, I'm like, I know, man. Right? And it happens all the time when I go somewhere. They just think I'm like this weird art dude, and it's like, oh, well, I hope they start this dude at first base, and they're like, what you know about this? I'm like, shut the fuck up, yo. And you just want to scream at them, like, yo, stop being so stereotypical and think that motherfuckers can't be multifaceted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when it goes into that, right? Like, granted, I don't listen to side style past 1979. I can't, because that shit is just. I grew up with that 80s side style shit is not really good. But finding out that shit, you sit there and you're just like, yo, what are they doing? Like, they look crazy. They look like futurists. They push the envelope, and it's just like that's all I want. I want someone to push the envelope, right, as much as they can, because you're not always going to be up there. You're not always, when you're pushing the envelope, you're not going to spend the rest of your career pushing the envelope. You're going to come back down one day and be like, oh, I'm going to put out this really smooth little folk record all of a sudden. It happens all the time, right? And then that folk record spawns one amazing song that people love. Then they get all these millions of fans. And you're like, yeah, but you didn't hear the first record where they were like, screaming on a song backwards. And they're like, yeah, but no one cares about that. And you're like, what? That put me through the hardest phase of my life. And it's like, yeah, but that's yours. That could be for you. Same thing when kids come at me and they say something about Dragon Ball. I'm like, bro, fuck out. I got VH. I have tapes of Dragon Ball. I got Namek Saga on VHS. I don't know what you're talking about. Original animated. Not Dragon Ball Z Kai. Fucking Dragon Ball Z. Next on Dragon Ball Z.
With all the blood and shit.
Oh, man, no, it's, but it was just, I just wish they would have did better, because they just always started from the beginning when you were ready to have a fight with Frieza. I was like, again? We just got here. Why do they keep restarting this? Nah. At least with Dragon Ball Super, they didn't do that. That they gave you the whole thing straight through. I was like, thank you, man. It took us like 2 years to get Super Saiyan Goku on TV. It was like, oh, we're going to stop it, and we're going to stop it again, and we're going to start it all over. Like, another Raditz fight? great. You know, so those things are important. I think they're important just to have a balance. You know, have a balance. You know how many kids I've gotten through like their defenses just because I'm talking about, you know, some weird rock band or anime. Right? I forgot what. Like, you know, I have like these. I have a bunch of buttons. So I had a Goku and Vegeta button. I still do that. What you know about that? I looked at it like I'm stupid. I'm like, get out of my face, bro. Because, you know, my biggest thing with these things, I tell people, I go, you think the kid designed this? This is a grown-ass man who drew these things for you. And you don't think grown-ass people should know about this? I go, Spider-Man is the creation of a 40-year-old Stan Lee. He wasn't 20 years old when he created this shit. He was a grown, fully formed, not his final form, but fully formed man. And he's writing these, you know, stories about a 15-year-old. So, like, you know, when it gets into these points, when people, and everything people love, right, they think it's like a youth culture. I go, no, it's aimed at youth culture, but it's not designed by youth culture. Half your sneakers aren't designed by, they're designed by some old dude who knows how to run the program. To take advice from somebody and then put things together. You know? Right? You look at Otomo or Miyazaki, dude, they're in their 70s, B. They're still giving us movies that we want. So I heard Miyazaki has another film coming out next year. Or this year. It's either this year or next year. He did one more film. Sometimes Miyazaki, though, he gets into this nostalgia shit. I'm like, come on, give me some weird shit again, bro.
Yeah.
Give me something weird, though. But Otomo, you know, Otomo doesn't do anything. Like, Otomo did a couple things. You know, and there's other joints that people, like, I saw Wolf Children, Summer Wars. Like, those are cool. But again, nothing even comes close to Akira, bro. Nothing even, and also because Akira is literally all hand-drawn, like old school animation. Once they got to a point of putting computer graphics, it was all over after that. Which works for Ghost in the Shell, but that's really, you know. Well, let's see what happens. Let's see how this dude who's doing Dune, Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah.
You know, I thought he should have done Akira. I love Taki. Like, he can do no wrong at this point. So I think he could do really well, but he's gonna have a hard time. I don't know, getting funding or something. But I thought Villeneuve could have done Akira just because Blade Runner looked like Akira. Simple as that. The radiation field, that could have easily been an Akira sequence right there.
Yeah.
But Taki's great, though. Taki's great. You know, I'm not going to complain about him. But movies, man, that's the whole point of movies, too. It gets you, it's a form of escapism. Right? You leave the theater and you're like, holy shit. What? Right? I saw The Matrix in the movie theater in 99. And you didn't really know what to expect. Because it was like some Y2K shit. The internet was really new still. I go see it with this girl. We came out and we're like, what the fuck did we just see? I was like, and then they had Ridging's machine at the end of it. I was like, man, what the fuck was that? And that's how it was. Like, it was like, holy shit. And it still kind of does that when I watch it. When I watch Matrix, I'm like, shit, still has it. Part 2 and Part 3, I'm like, man, you guys goofed it up.
Mm-hmm.
You goofed it the fuck up. Let's see what happens in Part 4. See what happens with that.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll fix it up. Yeah, who knows? Fucking, I have no clue what to expect with that. But, you know, like, so a band that always does that for me, the majority of the time, is Radiohead. I get so excited for a Radiohead record. Radiohead and Mars both. I got really excited for those records for different reasons, but I was like, yeah, this is really strange shit. Let's go. And then, you know, and it doesn't even have to be strange, but it's like, yeah. Right? It just sounds better, just feels better. People say all these bands, I go, no, not even close. Like, I like Tame Impala a lot. I don't know if the last record is ever going to hit me the way Lonerism will, but, you know, I like Currents a lot too. So did John. Me and John always talking about Currents. I was like, yeah, the production is great. Right, so there's things like that, but when you look at rock music as a pop culture form, it has so much more time and space than everything else. Except movies. But there aren't many movies before 1970 that I want to watch. But there's a shit ton of records I want to listen to before 1970. Like, there's still people that I liked that I haven't even scratched the surface on their catalog. You know, someone like Frank Zappa. Zappa's catalog is so massive. It's like, no, you don't. You be on, you could be on Apple Music, you could be on Spotify, whatever. That's a month's worth of constantly listening to.
Yeah.
And just trying to digest the density of it, of doing all that, right? Like I never even got into like the later years for Black Sabbath, even though I like Dio and Rainbow, right? So there's all these things, like I listen to Beatles demos like they're brand new. The Abbey Road sessions, the White Album sessions for the demos they have were so good that I probably listened to that more than almost anything else the last couple of years. The Abbey Road session is great because you just hear like how these things put together. You see how the White Album got put together, and it's like, man, this is good. Bowie, like when Bowie and Prince passed away. No, that's it. Listen to like Prince is another one. Prince has so much that you really can't cut into it. You'll like what you like, and then that's it. Right? A band like Kiss, that I like Destroyer a lot, but then there's all these other songs and these random records where I'm like, shit, this is really, really good. The whole record's trash, but this song is really, really good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just Kiss. I don't. They're from New York. We let them rock. So things like that. Like so. With pop culture, it's just it is so like with Harry Potter. I saw all the movies in the theater except one. I didn't see Deathly Hallows in the movie theater because I was waiting to go with somebody, and I never went. So when Netflix was still putting DVDs out, I told them to send me one, kept it, watched it, and then watched Deathly Hallows 2 immediately right afterwards. It was already in the theaters. That wasn't that bad. I was okay with that. Every Marvel film, every single one, I saw in the movie theater. Even Thor's. Thor. Yeah, but I saw all of those. I saw all like multiple times. No, let me not. I didn't see Doctor Strange more than once. But Black Panther I saw 5 times. Infinity War and Endgame I saw 4 times apiece. I saw Ragnarok 3 times. Winter Soldier in general, I seen Winter Soldier like 10 times. Civil War 10 times. It was, those films like they did. You're talking to like a 15-year-old at that point. Like, for me to see like a good Spider-Man, right? Thanos, bro. One of the first storylines I got into was the Infinity Gauntlet. I think I told you this once. I'm not sure, but I have all 6 of my Infinity Gauntlet signed by Jim Starlin. Because the first Comic-Con I went to, he was there, and they had just finished the storyline, and of course it wasn't packed the way it is now. But I took all my Infinity Gauntlets, and he looked at me like, "Oh, this is great." And I was like, "Yes, Jim Starlin." I think they're sealed. I don't know where they are, but I know they're sealed, so they're still good with that. But I have all those signed by Jim Starlin. Infinity Gauntlet because I was a big Silver Surfer fan. Why? Because he's a cosmic dude, so I like science fiction. So that was only my biggest critique was that the Silver Surfer wasn't there, and that's really his villain. That's not no one else's villain. It's not Avengers' villain. Just fuck out of here. Do your story. Read your work. Silver Surfer killed him, and he got resurrected. What you know about that? Alright, let's move on. I could be rambling about the most crazy shit. Like, you know what I stayed away from a long time was Apple Music. And because I wasn't trying to pay for that, right?
Uh-huh.
So I went back to work. I'm back at Apple. I work at Apple. That's all the information you're gonna get. So then they go, "Hey, do you want Apple Music for free?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." But before that happened, I had looked up this Deep Purple record that I like, and they had cuts for a deluxe version that I never heard of. And I was like, "Shit!" I was like, "Damn it!" So now I go to the rabbit hole of Apple Music. "Oh, you like this record? Try this record out. Try this record." I'm like, "What? Huh?" And like all these records that you've only heard in like a melody, once you hear it, it's like, yeah. So those little things, man, those are like, I give it to Spotify and Apple Music. I think Apple Music does a better job because they'll give you like a whole playlist from a particular year, and yeah, some of them they're right on, they're spot on.
Dope. Dope. So, going back a bit to poetry, most of your work is written in small letters, which,
Yeah.
based on reading your work and reading the work of other New Yorker poets and some of the Black Arts poets, I assume some of it comes from that. And also, I wanted to ask the briefcase. Where did the idea come from?
The briefcase. So I'll give you two answers for the non-capitalization of the letters, right? One is it might have to do with once I minimize capitalization, except for a couple words here and there, I have less stress to figure out what needs to be capitalized or not. That's one. Two, it might also do with a slight insecurity with my handle on punctuation and grammar, right? That's probably two. And three is definitely a complete homage to E.E. Cummings, who I fuck with.
Gotcha.
I like Cummings a lot. Like I have a lot of his work, and so much is weird. It's weird, and it's like, wow. And you're doing this with a typewriter, So it was definitely that. Like, I don't know if I ever noticed any of the Black Arts poets do it, but I've read a lot of Black Arts poets. Like there was a book, I read a couple books, but a lot of Langston Hughes, Paul Laurence Dunbar, a lot of Murray when he was still Leroy Jones. But there's so many. There's a lot of like. A lot of poetry. Like I'll tell you one thing. Like so, this poem in notes, 30 Ways of Looking at a New Yorker. The way that came about was that I believe I was doing an exercise for a class, and I know what is his last name? Let me. His name is Raymond Patterson. Raymond Patterson has a poem called 26 Ways of Looking at a Black Man. And that was in response to Wallace Stevens' 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. So Patterson wrote it in response to Stevens because Stevens was a racist, right? Even if he wasn't a racist, he said racist shit. So whoever loves Wallace Stevens, don't come after me. That's true. So Raymond Patterson, if my information is correct, was also a mentor to Willie Perdomo. So when I found that all out, I wanted to pay homage to both of them and do 30 Ways of Looking at a New Yorker. And Raymond's poem is a lot more like dense and heavy. Like it's a really like heavy piece. I don't know if I wanted to make mine so not inaccessible. Like if I want some kid to like get excited about the piece, I want him to at least like be able to like relate to it. So definitely it was Cummings though. Cummings is like he was the only other American poet that I really read eventually. I mean I read a bunch of them now, but he was like the second or third one. So the box, I know people like to say it's this Pedro Piedri thing, but it really isn't, right? I just don't want to disagree with them and get into this whole conversation about him carrying a box and me carrying a box. But I had that box when I found it when Pedro was still alive. Like I found it, like it had to be 98 or 99, probably on 9th Street in the Lower East Side between 1st, 2nd Avenue. I was probably walking home one day and I passed by this garbage pile, and here's a silver briefcase right there. Has a couple scratches, but it's nothing crazy. I open it and I'm like, what? So I took it home. First of all, I take shit home all the time. I was like, that was my old hoarding days. Now I try to be mindful of like insects and shit. So I took it home, and I think the first thing I did with it when I really realized what I wanted to use it for, I had my 4-track and tapes and all the wires. That's what I used it for a long, long time. I just left it somewhere. I didn't have any stickers on it. It was just a silver box in my room. But now the stickers completely stems from hip hop and getting stickers for when an album comes out, peeling stickers off of a telephone poles to get that Wu-Tang sticker. I have a door in my house that is even better than my briefcase. It has stickers from 92 up to 2009 or something like that. I mean, there's Wu-Tang stickers there. There's Organized Confusion stickers. There's the first Do You Want More Root stickers. There's Artifacts, J. the Damager. So then I started, Planet of the Apes, Star Wars. I have a lot of Palooza press pass because I went in '94. That door, hopefully one day ends up somewhere cool, because it took a lot of time to put that door together. And I have pictures of the door not being what it is, and then I eventually took another picture so people could see the door. I mean, there's some really, really, really good stickers on there, pricey. And I still have a book somewhere in the house that has all the stickers. Some others, a lot of Shepard Ferry stickers, and While You Were Sleeping, We Were Bombing. A lot of old graffiti stickers that I saved into a book. If I ever really want, I could just cut it out, put it on the box. But I think what the box has now, I was really particular that I think when I got that metal Puerto Rican flag, I think that's when I was like, oh, I want to design the box now. Because it was something that stuck out. And it wasn't right in the middle. It didn't have to be right in the middle. It was on the side. So you had to look a little harder. I think when I got my hands on that, that's when I redesigned everything. So I taped a couple things on top. I was real particular with the front. Here's some Hendrix, Pips, Subcomandante Marcos. The Gorillas thing was this comic book that was drawn. I knew the guy who drew it. It wasn't my boy, but I knew him. Some Frida Kahlo stickers. And then I was able to put the Puerto Rican flag on top, and then eventually put a Bronx sticker right next to it. And then the whole thing got redesigned. The whole thing got designed. The back one has even weirder stuff, and then the front has the Alex Gray sticker. I got a Karl Marx sticker I got somewhere in a bar. A Ginsberg sticker. It had a James Baldwin sticker, but then it got peeled off. Now it has a Rush sticker. Who else? Rush, Anti-Mask, which was one of the side projects that At the Drive-In did. New Eurekan stickers from the cafe, and a Peralta project, and some other things that were really cool. And I thought about dipping the whole thing in red paint at one point. Fuck stickers. Just dip the whole thing in red paint. And I was like, no, not yet. I mean, red is a color scheme in my whole life, right? It's going to be in my life for a long time, which stems from the socks and everything else. So I thought about the red suitcase would be really interesting, especially if it has all the stickers underneath it. So if it's just one coat, you can still see the stickers, but it'll be all redded out. So don't be surprised if that shit gets dipped in red paint.
Judge.
Yeah, I was like, oh, let me just paint it out real quick, boo, 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 and maybe put some varnish on it, because then I can still peel the stickers off, and then it'd be even crazier looking.
Yeah.
But eventually, I mean, I don't think eventually I'll peel it off. I don't think so, I'll tell you that much. If I peeled it off, I will paint the whole thing red and then re-sticker it again. That's what I should have did the first time. But I don't think my relationship with red happened when I found the box. That didn't happen until 10 years ago. 10, 12 years ago. Box is fresh though. I love the box. It gets a lot of attention, I don't have to be in attention, or the box is. I just leave it in a corner somewhere and people are like, oh my god. I'm like, he's sturdy.
Where does the relationship with red come from?
My last name. It's simple.
Yeah, of course.
It was my last name. It was something that I thought about in terms of Like, what do you want to be known for? You know, like if I die tomorrow, is there anything people know me for, kind of thing? Nah, yeah, they'll say, does he have red socks on? Of course I will. When I'm dead, easily. And you know, I'll put a prerequisite like if you come to the funeral, you have to have red socks on, and I'll send you to the exact place where you can buy them at. If they ever go out of style, out of like if they ever run like they close the business down, I'll go and buy them all up. That's cool. It's Uniqlo. It's not even a big secret. It's a Uniqlo Red Sox that they have. Like you can buy 4 for $12, but I have like 100 pairs already. Yeah, I seriously don't wear anything else besides red socks. I don't care if it clashes with my outfit. Once, there was one time, and that was for El Colegio, when I wore the Doctor Who socks. That's the last time. The Doctor Who socks are the only socks I wear that aren't the red socks. So I've worn them a few times, not too much though. But yeah, that was one of the times. There's a picture where I'm talking in front of the crowd and the socks look purple because that's the color of Tom Baker's scarf. That section that was on my feet.
Yeah,
that's the last time. That's the only pair of socks that I have that aren't red. Are those? And that goes back to my love for Doctor Who.
Obligado. So earlier you mentioned the connection. We talked about the connection between Puerto Rico and New York. So, and you mentioned a bit about being a New Yorker poet. So tell me, how does it feel to be a part of that movement?
I think grateful is one, right? Because it gives you a sense of community. It's also complicated though, because the school that it is, right, that I attach myself to, that I always talk about it being a school that starts with Pedro Piñero and Alcarín and Esteves and Bimbo and all these people from the 70s, and then it goes to like Willie and Medina and La Bruja and all these people that we came up with in like the early 90s, and the people afterwards. Like people ask me who's the next like, you know, New Yorker poet, and it's like, well, it depends who you ask. Because people think that if they slam at the New Yorker poet, they're a New Yorker poet. I go, yeah, but there's a certain sense of erasure with there being no Puerto Ricans at the New Yorker sometimes. La Bruja does really well. Like I commend her all the time on the open mic that she has on Mondays there, because the New Yorker shouldn't only be a space for slamming. It should be a space where you get to go read your work, and it gives you this like really nice sense of confidence. Like, yo, I read the New Yorker, because it still holds that validity to people. What I mean? You don't have to have a show. Just go and be on an open mic. Go have a nice time. Yo, go rock your shit. Go do your song. That's what I saw growing up. It wasn't the slams. It was the hip hop shit. If you went and you got your name called out of the hat, and you were going on after Mums the Schema, or fucking, you know, or fucking Mos Def doing a freestyle, and you were next, don't be whack, right? Don't be whack. So you go up there and you do this poem about graffiti, and half your graffiti crew is there doing all this like click clacks with you, and you're like, yeah, alright, cool, right? And with just being a New Yorker poet, is that it's a certain legacy, right? A certain legacy that each generation has to put on. And you know, like someone asked me like, where do I think I fit in? Like, you know, I'm tail end second generation. Right? I think generations run in like 5-year intervals, because there's only like 1 or 2 poets after me who I don't think they're third generation. I still think they're second generation. It's like me, Anthony Morales, and one other person who I'm just like forgetting their name right now, which I'm not being rude. But me and Anthony Morales were like the 2 young cats before like the next scene of slam people came out. Like when I started going to like slam things, I already had 7 years under my belt. I already had like this kind of like OG veteran status, like, yo, what's up, hey? Even though I was like 25, 26. But when you start at 18, that's what happens, right? Like you meet all these people who are old as fuck, and they're like, what up, Bone? And like, how you know him? I was like, oh, I gave him $10 once, you know, some stupid shit like that. but it does give me a sense of purpose, and a lot of it has to do with When the City Sleeps, right? When the City Sleeps was, when's the last time a Puerto Rican wrote a book about New York? This place that has cultivated 1 million Puerto Ricans for the last, 20, 30 years. That's why I wrote When the City Sleeps. But that's also why I wrote Notes on Return to the Island, because it has to do with the New Yorican relationship, the aquí and allá, right? Growing up, I was called a gringo. Now, no one gives a fuck where you're from. Oh, you're Puerto Rican? That's cool. That's it. That's all people care about. That's cool. And that's it. And I think that's commendable to generations after ours that just didn't let aquí and allá be a big situation due to technology, due to cross-pollination of the cities, things like that. Like, those things shouldn't be an issue, right? I think that it's better to connect than to destroy, right? Better to build than destroy, because you're not going to get anywhere by destroying anything. Doesn't matter what it is, unless you're destroying like a bomb or something. I don't know. That's it. But it's like, but being a New Yorican, for me, it's a big deal. For me, it's a big deal because I know there is a certain legacy that I'm representing, whether people want to identify it or not, and that's fine. The thing is, I'm always going to be a Puerto Rican poet, right? I'm always going to be a New Yorican poet. Because if you say, oh, he's a Puerto Rican poet, where's he from? New York? Oh, is he New Yorican? And people don't even have to know what that means. They just, oh, is he New Yorican? And they go, yeah. But I tell people, New Yorican to me isn't a cultural term in terms of identity. It's an art term. It's the same way the futurists coined themselves the futurist, and the Dadaist coined themselves the Dadaist, and the Surrealist, and all these schools, right? Like, we don't have a direct manifesto, but I bet you we could find one in a Pedro Pitley poem, right? We could probably find one in a Piñera poem, right? Do we have language? Of course we do. Spanglish is a direct correlation to New Yorican influence. See, now we get into the thing of like New Yorican being a cultural term for people who were here when they first migrated. But Spanglish and Salsa are New Yorican things. Those are New Yorican exports. And people don't talk about that enough. The poetry just came a little later, right? Painters may or may not identify as New Yorican, but they grew up in New York. They'll have a painting about New York. And they're still Puerto Rican at the end of the day. But the school of art that I'm talking about, school of writing, is New Yorican. Like the thing you identified with, like the long poems and structure and rhythm, yeah, that's not New York, because that's how New York runs. New York is fast, and you want to get to point A to point B in the fastest time possible. That's the frantic nature of it all, right? Someone like Willie Verdun has a cool, slow down, lay down, East Harlem, Spanish Harlem, El Barrio vibe, right? He's a little older, so yeah, I get that influence, right? And then people after me, right? If they love hip hop, that's how they come off. But they can still all identify as New Yorican poets. There's a guy named Chilo. Chilo's dope. He's in this group called Grito de Poetas. Chilo, Words Maldonado, they were in this group. They were and this guy named Chance. Chance wasn't Puerto Rican though, and he will tell you that's a problem. He's like, I ain't Puerto Rican, fuck that. I think it's like Colombian. But Words and Chilo were Puerto Ricans. Like they have really Chilo. I like his work. He's a good rapper too. And then we thought about, does the next New Yorican poet have to come from New York, right? If it's a school, and then it becomes like the beats, right? You have the New York school, then you have the San Francisco school. But then again, culturally, people want to always attach their city to their thing. So it's Chicago Rican and Philly Rican. I go, that's cool, but the writers, they won't identify being attached to any school. So you could be from Philly and still be a New Yorican poet. Why not? Do you think it's from New York? No. There's cafes, So it's those little things like that. But it's grateful, it's gratitude to be a part of something. To have like the OGs co-sign me at an early age, Those things were never lost on me.
Gotcha. So Now that we've talked about a lot about your influences, let's go into the creative process. How does that look like?
I don't know. It's changed the last few years.
Creative process meaning poetry and music.
Both. I can talk about both. The poetry process changed because I don't write every day like I used to. Right? I write when I feel more inspired. April always gets a lot of work because I push myself a little harder. Sometimes I let life work itself out and be entertaining and be happy and be sad. And sometimes I don't want to write about it. I just want to let it be a memory. And I'll write about it when it comes out. So, the pace, I can't say it's slower. I did just put a book out a couple of years ago, work within 2 years, So I know I can do it, but sometimes I just want to just let things relax, Just let it come out naturally. The music process is different. Just everything in terms of the music process is different. Like, depending on what kind of song it is, I work the drum patterns out first. What's the BPMs? What's the tempos? How many bars do I want for verse and bridge and chorus? How many bars I want for the solo? Because I like long solos. Do I want the chorus to be full of fills? It takes me a minute to really sit down on drums and be like, okay, this is good. Then there's always guitars afterwards, like if I have a riff or something. And then lyrics, and everything else comes afterwards. Lyrically, when I do write the lyrics, because right now in the band, Yabe writes, he co-writes everything, but normally he writes a lot of lyrics, and then if he just wants a section filled up, I'll just plug in some stuff, only because I can hear the melody, his melody in my head, and then we'll disagree on whether or not it works. But the insecurities I have as a musician are not there for me as a poet. So it's a different feel. We are recording the record, whenever we come back, the apocalypse, we are working on the record right now. We have a few songs tracked out already, but COVID-19 has definitely stopped some things. So with music, sometimes they come out of the blue, and they can be done in a week. Like, I'll go through it a couple times, I go, does it sound better? This sounds better, and it'll work. It just needs to get, mixed, mastered, and then like really made sound well. And with poetry, sometimes it can be a couple of hours. Now, I always want to go back and comb it through, see if there's any things that I'm missing that aren't necessary. But a lot of it's muscle memory. It's muscle memory, right? Like, I play guitar every day. I try to write at least a couple times a week to just keep everything moving. There was once from like 2004 to like 2009 where I didn't write a lot at all. Like, I had the band. I had just started the band, so like I was still trying to flesh things out, trying to figure out this relationship with me being like a singer-songwriter, which I never wanted to be. I just wanted to play guitar. And just kind of teach myself how to write these songs. And then 2009 hit, and then all these poems came out nowhere. Well, that's not true. I know where they came from, but all these poems came out, and I wrote for about 2-3 years straight. And that was eventually When the City Sleeps was that, and then Renovatio came out of that too. And then in that time span, that was the first time where I was able to balance band and poetry. For me, it's hard because a lot of it has to do with focus. So if I'm playing guitar every day and I'm trying to write songs, I may or may not get any poems out. But when I do, I'm like, okay, cool, this is working. Like, this is the perfect time for me to do that is now, you know what I mean? But just try not to burn yourself out and try not to write the same thing twice. But being a musician is definitely a little harder than being a poet. But what's hilarious, though, is people's critique on poetry is almost next to nothing than your critique on music. Like, anyone can write a poem. If it's bad, whatever, that's on you. But everyone can't just pick up a guitar and start playing. So it's really interesting the relationship the listener has with music, and they like shrug it off like, yeah, it's kind of boring. Yeah, that might be true, but you still give the musician credit because they wrote that song. And literally right now I'm showing someone like real basic stuff to play guitar, and the first thing I always tell people is that I want you to hold the chord down for as long as you can, and it's like a minute, and they're like, yo, what the fuck was that? I go, yeah, that's what guitar players have to go through all the time, and it doesn't hurt us anymore because we've been doing this for so long. So that alone should administer respect from an audience, right? Just playing guitar, playing piano, just learning the instrument enough to be like, yeah, I know how to play, right? A singer who could crack a melody out, regardless of how boring it is, should still administer respect, because the listener, if they can, more power to them. If they can't, enjoy all this. Don't be grumpy about it. Don't be grumpy. That's something that I really paid attention to one time. I told this other musician that I know. So I was like, because they said something about poetry, they were like, they said, damn, boom, that poem was amazing. I was like, thank you, I appreciate it. But I've had people come up to me and go, I love your poetry, but I don't really like your band. And that's really interesting. I was like, really, is your music vocabulary that extensive? Or are you just not inclined to critique someone who you feel is being more vulnerable as a writer than as a musician? So those are the things I think about. Like, our songs tend to be a little more dramatic and whatever. Let's hope people enjoy them. I just want people to enjoy them, right? But there's more room for critique in music than there is for poetry. Art, same, like actual painting, same thing. Everyone thinks they know how to paint. I'm like, no, you know how to put paint on a canvas, but you don't know how to paint. If I ask you about your technique and what you're purposely doing, you can't just tell me, I just put a couple things on a canvas. I like those colors. Okay. Then you ask somebody else and they go, well, first I start off with a really, really light brush stroke on this fan brush that I had that was like 1 millimeter, and you're like, yeah, because it's about the end goal, but it's also about the journey to get there. The first word, the first paint, and the first chord, right? Everything is a journey. Everything is a journey till you finish that one particular thing, then you start another one. Like, I have this one song in my head that's been in my head for years. I just don't know. I don't know where to put it at. It's definitely more of a bridge. But it's like I'm trying to figure out, can it play in this key and things like that, and this speed and all those other things. But when the record comes out, man, I'm really, really excited. The record's going to be called The New Myths, and we're hoping by the first single, which you probably already heard because I know we played it, is a Dance of a Nuclear Bomb. That's going to be the first single, and the first video. Again, all these things we're hoping to have everything done by the summertime, only because just pushed it back a bit. But it's gonna be good. And for those kind of things, the same thing as having a book. Even though we have the EP from a couple years ago, like, this is gonna be just foundation, right? It's a foundation builder. The record's there. We'll play as many shows as we possibly can. But then I want to go back to the studio and just record a bunch of weird shit. Like, hey, I have this, 30 minutes of noise. I hope you guys like it. If you don't like it, just go back to the other record. It's very much what the Mars Volta did. Like, the Mars Volta was the main thing, but then he had all these side projects that he would say in the interview was really just there to help out the Mars Volta eventually for tours. But then I also looked at someone like Zappa, who just had all these ideas and just always wanted to put their records out. Right? Prince had 24 access to a studio. Right? So when the New Myths is recorded and mixed and put out, and you can listen to it and buy wherever, yeah, I'm gonna probably go by the next day and be like, oh, good. I have this one song that's, we put one out last year. The track is called Wanderlust. It's 16 minutes of soundscapes to be attached to a movie. But the only reason why I kept fucking with that song because I had a painter that said, "Oh, I love that song. You got to download that song from your MySpace," and I've been playing it ever since. I was like, "What?" And I thought it was really interesting that someone told me that, because it's like, these are little things that you need to hear, you know, or like, you know, oh, your poem really got me through my breakup, or your poem made me really be proud to be a teacher. Like, these little things, it's, you know, those are things that keep you moving. So if my son goes, "Oh, you like that chord progression?" You're like, "Yeah, that's what I'm talking about." You know, or my mom said once, "Hey, you sounded pretty good." My mom was a really big criticizer of my singing voice, which didn't help me as a kid. But she's like, "You did great." I was like, "Yeah, thanks, lady." I forget when was the last time she saw me play. I don't think she saw me play at the show. It was just like this, I had this like really random show. She was like, "Oh, you did great, Pop." I was like, "Yeah, thanks." Got my face. I know you hate rock music. You know, can't be that person all the time.
Gotcha. So, keeping it on the subject of creative process, a lot of your work, most of it, you do it in a DIY fashion, in the sense that you put everything out yourself. Talk to me about what inspired you to do that, and how you work through it.
So in 2011, I was shopping around When the City Sleeps, and I got some really good feedback from some people. Some people never got back to me, and this one person said, "Yeah, I could put it out, but it won't be for like another year and a half." And this is like late 2011. I was like, "That's 2013." I was like, "I'm not waiting that long." So I had Holler published that year for his magazine in LA. Holler was that was 2011. Holler was like a 7-year-old poem already that I had laying around. Because I had it, you know, for once Pelo Bueno was done, I already had some of these poems already set. And I called this venue in LA where the magazine was attached to, and I was like, "Hey, what's up? You guys have any gigs available in January?" They're like, "Yeah. Do you have a book coming out?" And I was like, "Yes." They're like, "Oh, what's it called?" I go, "When the City Sleeps." They're like, "Fantastic. Yeah, we'll give you a date on the calendar, and we'll get back to you." I was like, "Fantastic." When I hung up the phone, I go, "What the fuck did I just do?" Like, I was like, "I ain't got no goddamn book." So I called this fiction writer out here in New York. His name is Charlie Vasquez. He's a great writer. I asked him to help me with editing the line breaking, but really he was putting out independent books on his own. So he walked me through the whole process. And we used InDesign then. I don't use InDesign anymore. I have a really particular way how I do the books now. I like the way they look better. But back then, it was like we used InDesign, and the book, I had to, you know, agree with me if you want, I did a blind approval for the last version of the book cover, because I needed to be out fast. And I kept getting the cover wrong by like a centimeter. So the very last one, I go, "Look, I don't want a physical proof. That's going to take me 6 days. It's going to take forever." So I approved it. So it got launched on the 1st. And I got my first batch of books on like the 11th and the 12th. And the first gig was in LA, I think on the 17th that year. And what that taught me was, especially in hindsight, that taught me not to wait around for anybody. You know, like if your book looks good or better than good, right? Like I'm just talking about it because I know When the City Sleeps looks very different from Notes. Like, I mean, there's a complete worlds apart because I've done so many. Now I know how things actually look, you know? And, you know, When the City Sleeps for 2012, when it came out, was a great year. I had a shit ton of shows. And I went, I read from LA to London that year. I had shows all over the place. LA, in 2013, I did Chicago, in the Midwest, bunch of New York shows. And when Hurricane Sandy hit New York in 2012, I was in Amsterdam. So I was chilling. I was like, I still had my job, you know, I was still working. They let me take a little like leave of absence to go on tour. And it was a good time. It was a really, really good time. And I'm like, that was, man, I was basically in LA the whole winter of 2012. Even though they said it was a warm winter that year, it was still like I was sweating in California the whole time. I think people don't. I think people want to wait around for someone to validate them with a book deal. And, you know, maybe I don't have that need because Pelo Bueno wasn't put out by me. It was put out by somebody else who put money into it and things like that. But I do know that there were a lot of poems in When the City Sleeps that came out in other things, like journals, like when I actually like submitted things, stuff like that. So I felt good. I got a write-up in like Daily News. I had a couple of write-ups, and I was like, oh, this is great. And, you know, the same thing didn't happen for Renovatio, maybe because it was too soon, or just the work was a little different. But the same stuff kind of happened for Notes. Notes got received really well. And I don't know if I'm going to put more books out on my own, or just re-release the old ones and redesign them and stuff like that. But we'll see. I do have an offer now from someone who wants to publish a book. So we'll see, because my thing is, because I'm strong-willed in this sense of I know what I want, I'm okay having someone take the reins and give me their ideas that I may not see, you know? But that doesn't mean I'm going to get a book that I don't like the way it's designed. No, I'm going to tell you from jump. Like, you can't, I mean, the thing is, when you talk to people who have book deals with small presses, they sound like they're miserable. They go, man, I couldn't get my book for this reading. I was like, I know I'm going to have books for reading. I'm the one who orders them. It gets to me in 5-6 days. Ta-da! Right? So the independent run was really, really good for me. It really gave me a sense of purpose. And it definitely probably helped me in those 5-6 years of freelancing that I did, that was flourishing, you know? I was always able, to, Renovatio was the reason why I think I got to Puerto Rico. I think Jose Irizarry read Renovatio first. I think he's the one, he's also another one who talks about the way I don't have stanza breaks and like notes to self on the refrigerator. Like he mentions that, and he mentions all these other little poems. I was like, huh, interesting. And, you know, those are good things to hear, you know. But, you know, I don't know everyone likes it. I'm okay with that. I don't like every book I read. Please. There's massive amounts of books that I don't like. Sometimes I'm like, how'd you get a book deal? You know, it's whatever. It's a process, man. And in 20 years, no one's going to give two shits who put my books out. Unless I still have Grand Concourse Press, which I probably will. Let's see what we put out. Because I am trying to put out other things. But if an artist or writer doesn't get back to me, I can't force them, you know? Can't force them.
Yeah, obligado. So, earlier we talked about, you mentioned how April helps you write. So, talk to me about your relationship with NaPoWriMo.
How many questions do we have left, Fern?
Like 4 or 5.
A 2-hour conversation.
Doesn't end, bruh.
So, 30 for 30, and the first one that I did was right after a really bad breakup. It was after a really bad breakup. It was, and that poem ended up being a compilation of a heartbreak. It was a really bad breakup. I wrote 25 poems about the breakup, and then I posted them all on the wall, and I was like, man, I can't read 25 poems about heartbreak at a gig. So I compressed them all into one poem. And, it's still one of my favorite poems to read. I just can't, like I said earlier, I can't keep reading these poems about heartbreak because it does slightly affect me sometimes. 30 for 30 has been great. I think 30 for 30 is a good community-based builder thing. The poems from 2010 and 2011 ended up being a lot of poems in Renovatio. And 2015, 2016 was probably the bulk of notes because I was in Puerto Rico most of those times. So it allows your brain to go, hey, it's April, time to buckle down, do some poems. And some people want to do like a poem a year, a poem a day for a year. That's fine. I just know that not all those poems are going to be good. So I'm okay with that. So I don't mind April being the month that I write as much as I can to not fill the quota, but just to get those juices running. Have something new for the year. So that's like the biggest thing. Like, I think 30 for 30, NaPoWriMo, whatever how you pronounce it, I always forget. But 30 for 30 is I think is essential. I think it's really good. And it's a big community thing. If you have a couple other writers who are with you, ready to do it, they anticipate your poem every day, and they want to read it and give you critique. Those things are great. Believe that. I think those things are important.
Keeps the brain active and the community alive.
Yeah, man. The first year with the because that was my old Facebook page. Man, everybody knew I had broken up because by the third day, those poems are brutal. They were brutal. Huh. They were like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "No. What are you talking about? I had a breakup." And those things are. Sometimes you need community to know it, and I'm. Ever since then, though, I'm a lot more private now. I don't know if I would do that now because of the things that happened in 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. Like, after 2011, I was pretty much like, nah, this website, all this has to be a lot more professional for me. I can't be putting everything out here like that because then people know too much. And then people think they know you and they don't know you, Back then was different. It was different back then.
Gotcha. So, now that we're still on the subject of poetry, so based on what you've seen or read, what do you think poetry needs in order to continue on the good path?
I don't know if it needs anything, man. There's always ebbs and flows. There's always ups and downs. Poetry's always the new hot thing and always the one thing going out of style. I think at the highs, there's always a few people that get picked out and they end up being really popular. And at the low, no one likes it, right? So I think we're in this. There's always going to be a poetry community because it's community, right? It's not. They're not going to go anywhere unless they move. But there's some places out here in the States and the world that have had open mics for the last 15 years. 18 years. The New Yorkers had a slam there since 90 something. 95. A Friday night slam every Friday since 95. That's insane. That's 25 years, So it's I just think for new people, there's some really amazing younger writers, and there's so many young people who get put in really good positions. And I don't know. Okay, do I want to say I want them to write the best work possible? Of course. But I kind of want them to live their life. some people go to college, grad school, and then they want to be full-time writers, and then they become professors, and I'm like, okay, but it's like, is this what you wanted to do? I wanted to be a professor at one point. I don't want to do that now. No, because being an adjunct is shitty. You get paid like shit, and when he's supposed to have time to create, So I just tell people, if you want to be a writer, if you can write while you're happy, that's going to be great. Because writing while you're happy just makes things so much easier. Writing when you're sad is typical, but writing when you're happy, that's a real, transformative situation. Is that right there? Is being able to write about everything, even the really sad stuff, when you're happy. I don't know. There's certain poets that people emulate, and I'll go, I don't want to be the drunk, lonely poet. I mean, I'll be the rock and roll anime dude. I don't mind that, But it's like the drunk, lonely poet, the angry poet. Like those stereotypes are cool, but it's like they're overused already, And and you see it. You see it when you go through a bunch of open mics. You see all the young, really new people. Or just the new people in general. They write the same stuff. Same concepts. Same subject matter. And it's like a rite of passage. You have to get through all that to get the stuff you really want to talk about. Yeah. So I want poets to be happy. I want them to be happy, honestly. Write about whatever you want to write about. But just try to live a happy and healthy life. It'll make your writing better. And don't be rude to poetry either. Like, don't be a poet for 5 minutes, get a little popularity, and then go, hey, I want to do this now. I go, you're allowed to do it. But if you don't, if you don't work on the craft when you're not writing poetry, then you're not really a poet. I want you to work on the craft. I want you to push your personal envelope and push it along. Next question.
So, you mentioned that you're finishing the album with Mona Passage, and you have a book about your parents.
Yeah.
How are those projects coming along, and what's next after that, if you have anything else?
Well, the record's gonna be done first. I need the record to be done first, because then I can give more attention to the book. I'll tell you, but it's not a secret. But the book after that I'm working on is a pop culture book. It's a book about everything that I like. It's a book about everything we just talked about, everything that I love, all those things. So is what that pop culture book will be the one I should have wrote, that people would have thought I wrote. Let me see. Hold on. Let me see. Yeah, the pop culture book is going to consist about poems about anime, music, movies, TV shows, work. I have these poems about my actual jobs, that they're kind of funny because jobs all suck. Right? Books, video games, the internet. I'm probably going to use some of the old poems that I had and put it all together. That's the thing is, I'm just putting those things together. I don't have a title for that or anything. But yeah, the pop culture one will be after my parents' book, or at the same time. Who knows? But yeah, so it'll be the Mona record, the new myths, the book about my parents, and then the pop culture book.
Perfect. And final question: where can people find you, man?
Well, on the blog, beats come through. Be like, ooh. I'm like, what do you want? Man, bro, I'm busy out here brooding. Well, everything. For me is my first and last name, Bonafide Rojas. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even YouTube. They're all whatever handle .com/Bonafide Rojas or Bonafide.Rojas. And then the band will be everything for Mona Passage. But primarily the monapassage.bandcamp.com. We use Bandcamp more because you can download higher quality. But yeah, it's and just look out. I mean, once you'll know. Once the single is out, you will know. I'm gonna splatter that shit all over the place because it's a good song. I think we like it a lot, and we feel good that it's the first song, the first single. And we want to go back to Puerto Rico and play, bro. Who knows when that's gonna happen? The apocalypse.
Judge.
Yo, for real. But yeah, man, I appreciate you giving me a shout and letting me do this.
I mean, thank you for saying yeah.
Is this like the average? Like everyone gives you 2.5 hours?
You're the longest. You're the longest.
My God, that just means you're making me sound like I talk a lot. I mean, you asked for the origin story. That's like a 40-minute story right there. You get that when I'm drunk. I go, what? Man, listen. A radioactive spider came and fucking bit me. And my whole world's been different since. And, but it's like, I've told these stories before. These are old foundation stories. And, it's cool.
Awesome. So, FENCast with Bonafide Rojas or Rojas.
Chill, Lou Rojas, I'll kill you.
AKA the band leader from the Mona Passage, AKA the Yankees fan, AKA the Knicks fan, sadly.
Yeah, basically.
That's it, man. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Bob. Wait, I'm going to give a shout to some people. I'm going to give a shout to my man Yabe L, the co-band leader with me in the Mona Passage. He's really put us and put me in a healthy position with the band because bands have such weird dynamics that sometimes you end up doing everything on your own and it's like, hey, look, I'm Trent Reznor in Nine Inch Nails, but I'd rather be Paul and John or Keith and Mick. It's always good to have another person to bounce things off, so kudos to him and shouts to him. Shouts to my man Kumasi J. Barnett, who has the art exhibit, The Amazing Black Man. If you guys like art, you should check it out. He reappropriates Spider-Man covers and calls them The Amazing Black Man, and they're all political, and it's really great. And, shout out to Derek Jeter for making my childhood really, really healthy. And him and Mariano Rivera, I own both their authentic baseball jerseys. They're the first 2 jerseys I ever bought. And I cried at both their final games at Yankee Stadium. It was heart-wrenching. I'm a huge baseball fan, bro. I really thought I was going to play baseball when I was a kid. I wanted to play second base or center field, even though I didn't really have an arm for center field. But I wanted to play second base, and I was like, yeah, that's it. Number 6 for the Yankees, which was Joe Torre's number, which kind of got me mad. But yeah, that's it. Signing off. Te veo por ahí.
Dale, brother. Take care.
Te veo. Chao, papi.